Good evening and welcome to what isn't quite what we would like our sixth form parent information to be. Obviously we would have preferred to invite you into the building, but for the time being this will have to do. A number of people asked for the what was going to be a live stream to be recorded, and so we thought it was as beneficial to send it out as a recording so that you can listen to it when at a time that suits you and at your own pace. So first of all, an introduction to the sixth form team. So Mr. Brady is our assistant principal who oversees sixth form. He's my line manager. I'm Mrs. Barlow. I'm the director of sixth form. I hate this. I'm recording my face on this, but I think it's probably worthwhile that you get to see who I am. Then we've got two assistant directors of sixth form who are new to the team this year. They are Mr. Gunning and Dr. Sate, both of whom are sixth form tutors. Mr. Gunning is a year 13 tutor and Dr. Sate is a year 12 tutor. In addition to them, or they make part of a team of 11 tutors overall, who make up the sixth form tutor team. We've then got Mrs. Hart. We're very lucky to have Mrs. Hart, who is our mentoring and pastoral manager within the sixth form and oversees all the academic intervention and mentoring within the school as well. So first of all, a congratulations and a welcome really. So congratulations to all of your sons who have made it into St Ambrose sixth form. We're very, very happy to have them here. Congratulations to them on their GCSE results. It's been a very, very strange 2 years at GCSE for them. I'm hoping that their 2 years at A-level are going to be a lot more normal, but time will tell on that front. The great thing about sixth form is it's a fresh start. So we have some new students who are joining us from a completely different school, sometimes different areas of the country, sometimes different countries. They have a very, very new start. They're in a new environment. They've got to make new friends. Equally, though, it's a new start for our St Ambrose students who have been with us for 5 years or slightly less already. In that sixth form is a different environment. It's integrated into the school. It doesn't have that same freedom as a college. We need our boys, our sixth form students, gentlemen of the sixth form, we like to call them, to be role models to the rest of the school and really step up into sixth form. But they get a chance to make a fresh start. Maybe subjects that didn't suit them lower down the school, they no longer have to take. They've had an opportunity to choose the subjects that they want to take, and they have several privileges which I will talk about later on as well. So two-year course, obviously it's slightly less than 2 years by the time we get to it to complete A levels. As you well know from the options process, it's either 4 subjects for those for whom that is the right decision, or it's 3 plus an EPQ or 3 plus core maths, again depending on what is the best setup per individual. The great thing is you've got teachers here who will be really invested in your son's future, a form tutor who will stay with them to support them pastorally and academically through sixth form, and a strong teacher base as well. It's really important, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a slide or two, about making a great first impression. You only get that chance to make the first impression once, and also to harbour good study skills from the off. So the luxury of a free period, it's not really a free period, we call it a study period, and it's there because that amount of study is required to achieve at A-level. The beauty of A-levels is that whenever your son tells you he hasn't got any work to do, that is not true. At A-level there is always work to do, because it's not just a case of going and sitting in a lesson and then doing some homework. There's always extended tasks, consolidation, research into future options. There's a never-ending carousel of things that need doing at A-level. So whenever your son tells you he has nothing to do, it is not true. There is always something to do. That said, he must strike a fine balance as well between work and play and make sure that he gets some rest as well. So in terms of expectations and compliance, late on last week, Friday I think it was, or maybe early this week, we sent a parent mail out which had the sixth form handbook attached. We call it the sixth form ABC, Attitude, Behaviour and Compliance. We would ask you to please, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you go through that handbook, you know what our expectations are. Your son will have gone through that in tutor time with his form tutor, and he has got a paper copy of it as well. It's also, if it's not already been uploaded, it will be uploaded to the website so that you've got access to that. But please do familiarise yourself with that. Expectations within the building. Phones and headphones are allowed for sixth formers, but not as they are walking around the building. when they are sat in sixth form areas, if they're doing some quiet study in their study periods, it's absolutely fine for them to have their headphones on. But because we are not a college, we are a school, we're also a school where we haven't got a separate sixth form centre. The sixth form is very much integrated within the building. We do need our sixth formers to respect and comply with that situation in setting an example for the lower years. Eating and chewing, so eating students, sixth form students are allowed to eat on the top floor of the building, as well as in the down floor, downstairs, like everyone else. Chewing we prefer not, please, so no chewing in the building. Obviously the mess needs to be picked up after them, but that's something we deal with internally. Out and about in the community, they get the freedom, sixth form, as a privilege, which again I'll talk about in a minute, to venture out at lunchtime and to leave the building early, period 5. It's very important that early on they realise how they are perceived as potentially a group of young men, their age group, to an elderly woman in the park, or maybe a young parent who's out with their child in the park, and they make sure that they are representing themselves and the school in the very, very best way. So the privileges that I just alluded to. As I said, lunchtimes our sixth form students are allowed to sign out of the building. They need to do that at reception. They all should have an ID card. If any of them have not got an ID card, they will need to bring £5 in for a new one and get a replacement card. So that's used for signing in and out. It's also used for GCSE and A-level exams as well, so they do need to make sure that they have that ID card. It's a requirement of them being in the building. And obviously they have to sign back in. Lunch ends at 12, well, no, period 4 starts at 1:35. We ask the boys to be back in the building by 1:30, so they've got their bags and they're at their classrooms and sat down ready for their lessons to start at 1:35. There's a period 5 privilege as well, which is that students may, if they have a study period, period 5, they may sign out of the building, but again, they must sign out from a safeguarding point of view. We have to know where your son is, whether or not they're on site or not, and if they have left site, we need authorisation of why. Talking of which, I haven't actually included it on my slides, but whilst I remember, any absence that you know about in advance needs to be reported, please, with evidence for appointments, etc. It needs to be reported to our attendance officer in advance, please, and be approved. If it's an illness on the day, again, it needs to be communicated to our attendance officer, but that needs to come from you, not your son. So we do need parental confirmation of any absence, please. Mobile phones we've spoken about, they're for use in the sixth form areas only. They are not to walk around the school with their phones out, and just make sure that they are respecting the school environment in that way. Spoken about food as well. The fitness suite, I'm really pleased to say, is back in action this year. Obviously, COVID-wise, we couldn't have it open last year, but it is a very popular sixth form privilege for our students to go and use that in a study period, so long as they're not overusing it and not doing any study, obviously. Workspace is mostly the top floor. We've got a huge lower sixth, the biggest that I've known in my 6 years at St Ambrose. So whilst we're using some of the top floor as a testing centre, it's actually a little tight on space at the moment. But once that testing centre is gone by the end of this week, they will have full use of the top floor. They've got the breakout areas. When the atrium is not being used for break time or lunchtime, they can also work downstairs. It's actually sweltering in the building this week, and the downstairs is a lot cooler than the upstairs, so a lot of them are choosing to work down there at the moment. In addition to that, there are, if a classroom is free and if whoever's classroom it is, they're happy as a member of staff to allow students to work in there, there is that option as well from time to time when a room is free. You'll notice I'm using the word study periods and not free periods. It is, like I said, there is so much work to do at A-level. It's really important that from the beginning time is used effectively. And so we do refer to them as study periods. We do expect the boys to have work out in their study periods. They still have break and lunch and after school to relax. But we do yet like them to make full use of their study periods and work effectively. We have some supervised study periods in the timetable in order to support that as well. And we will identify students who, for one reason or another, we would think would benefit from being in those supervised study periods based on either, they need to maybe they're not choosing to use their study periods effectively, and so it has come to our attention they would benefit from being supervised in that study time. Or alternatively, it becomes apparent that they're struggling academically in one subject or another, and again, it's a way of us ensuring they get that time and quiet environment to do their work. Sixth formers get the opportunity to lead societies when they get into sixth form, and we've already had so many year 12s come forward and say that they want to start a society. We've had what I can't remember what it's called now. We've had one saying they want to do a maths challenge, which is music to my ears as a maths teacher. We've also had a member who wants to do some sort of finance online economicsy thing that I don't know much about because I'm not an economics teacher, but yeah, they're dead keen to set up societies to include lower school and give them opportunities that maybe they wish they'd had when they were lower down the school and they didn't, or that they've just really missed since they haven't been available last year and the year before because of COVID. Wednesday afternoons is another sixth form privilege that all get. So Wednesday afternoons is, well, sort of off timetable. There are different activities running on a Wednesday afternoon, none of the normal standard A-level subjects. And I'll talk a little bit more about what is on offer on a Wednesday afternoon on the next slide. So for year 12s, period 4, they do a carousel. Now this only ran for the first time last year. It was born of my frustrations as a sixth form tutor before I became director of sixth form, that I was writing references for university, for job applications, for apprenticeships, for my students who, lovely boys though they were, didn't really have much in terms of extracurricular and supercurricular involvement to include in a personal statement and in a reference. And so it seemed to me that we could be making better use of the Wednesday afternoons and making sure that each student, even those who just sort of come to school, go through the motions and then go home and play computer games, that they get an opportunity to experience some enhancing both application and personally enhancing experiences. So as you can see, that's what's available period 4. Now, your son has already started this. They started yesterday afternoon. It works on a half-termly rotation. So each tutor group will spend 6 to 7 weeks or 5 to 7 weeks, depending on how long the half term is, doing the MOOCs activity. They will then move the next half term to do some student finance. The following half term, they'll move and do the food, nutrition and budgeting. So every student should get a chance to do all of these things, assuming we manage to stay in school for the entire year and do 6-term rotation. So MOOCs, for those of you who aren't aware, they are online courses. They are free. Sometimes you have to pay at the end for a certificate, but we're going to do some in-house certificating to avoid that for those who don't want to pay for their certificate. They're fabulous things. The boys will. There's an absolute world of them out there. The boys will get to opt in for 1, possibly 2 courses. It will hopefully feed into what they're thinking of doing after sixth form, whether it's university, apprenticeships, but whichever area they're interested in. And it's great for those who have to go to interview for university or jobs to talk about something that they've done outside of their curriculum area. And it also enhances personal statements. And some of them, for example, the University of York, to do an English degree there, I think it's English literature, they will actually offer a reduced offer for students who have signed up and completed their MOOC, which is available. So there are all sorts of providers. Some of them are universities, and those universities may give a reduced offer to students who have completed their MOOC. Student finance is exactly what it sounds like it is. We do a Money Matters course with, I want to say Martin Lawrence, but it's not Martin Lawrence because he's the actor. Who's the money saving expert man? The money saving expert man. He does a course and sort of a guided resources. So Mr. Rush does that with the groups as they rotate with him. Food, nutrition and budgeting is me. And I wanted to do this last year, but the kitchen wasn't open. So we're just going to look at making sure that when your son leaves home for the first time, he's got an idea of what food costs, how to budget a nutritional weekly allowance of food, and to make sure that, I know for sure some of your children have been cooking since they were 12, but others maybe not so much. So we want to make sure that everyone's got the basic kitchen experience of how to chop things safely, how to turn an oven on and off, how to do everything safely, and hopefully give them a couple of ideas for budget and nutritional recipes as well. We will be asking, please, for a small contribution in terms of the food provision for that. Just means that we can order all the food in and not have to worry about you and your son bringing food on the right day and measuring out things and stuff like that. So that will come round via from our finance officer, and just ask for I will have to budget and work out how much we need to ask you for, but a small contribution, please, so that those activities can take place. Very popular rotation is Dr. Sate's self-defense group, which is in the sports hall, and he teaches obviously not to fight, but more to pacify a situation, how to avoid confrontation, and then how should it come about, how to sort of protect yourself if that does come about. Mr. Brady does a CV writing and post-18 application session, which is very popular as well. We're also very much trying this year, which again, because of COVID last year, we couldn't do, to set up some volunteering placements locally, and to have Mr. Roach working on advocacy and volunteering. So for the time being, that will be in school, but we are hopeful. We've got a few links, and should any of you have any links with local charities or community work that you think would welcome our involvement on a Wednesday afternoon, please do let me know. But we have a few plans in the pipeline. We just need to finalise things on. So that's period 4. Then there's period 5, where students get to sign up either for, and they've opted into this already, they get to do sports, which could be football, rugby, I think we've got table tennis, badminton, we've got the fitness suite. Every other week I think the pool is available, but there are lessons in there some weeks, so that will be slightly more ad hoc, and the PE department will communicate that with the boys. Alternatively, there is the Young Enterprise Society, which is an opportunity to set up a business. They actually create products, they sell them. We've had huge success with the Young Enterprise teams in the past. There's also the Oxbridge group, for those who potentially will be applying to Oxford or Cambridge, with Mrs. Scott, who has vast experience of working with our Oxbridge students. And there's the Medic Society, which is run by Mrs. White, again, who has a medical background and has a lot of experience of working with our medics with medical students on their applications. So those are available period 5 on a Wednesday. Both sessions are compulsory, and we do need students in school for those. So here's our student leadership setup. We're really, really proud of the team, I have to say. We've changed the setup slightly this year so that we've got a head boy, 3 deputies, and then 5 assistant head boys, each of whom are supported by a senior prefect. We've also got our 4 houses, which are, despite us sort of switching to having heads of year within school rather than heads of house, our house captains are keeping the house system very much up and running in terms of charity work, and fundraising and competitions, and I'm so proud of them. The 4 boys, who, you know, are only just turning 17, each stood up in front of a quarter of the school yesterday and did a house assembly, which they planned themselves, they delivered as a team, and I'm incredibly proud of them, and they quite rightly are very proud of themselves as well. The reason I'm talking to you about this is this, obviously, come March, April, we will be looking to recruit the next student leadership team from the Year 12 year group. Year 13 will leave us middle of May, but by Easter, everything's quite full on for them, and so we look to replace the student leadership team from Easter onwards. We'll have an application process, we will interview for the positions of head boys, deputies and assistant head boys, and we will also interview for the house captain posts. They are such a wonderful team. They have already done so much to help the school, to promote their various areas of responsibility, which hopefully you can see on the PowerPoint: our mental health, careers, the arts, advocacy and Edmund Rice International. We've got sports representatives, spirituality representatives, environmental and mentoring and transition. And I have to say, all of them have been so involved, both before the summer holidays and in the last week since we've come back, in helping us, helping staff, helping their peers, and helping the new arrivals at the school. So we had a welcome assembly with our Year 12s on Thursday when they came in to join us, and our student leadership team actually volunteered 3 of them to step in completely unplanned and off the cuff, just to give our Year 12s some advice, something that they wish they'd been told a year down the line, things that they've learned retrospectively. And here are just some of the comments that they came out with on this slide and the next one. Didn't realise how steep the jump from GCSE was going to be. Hadn't got an appreciation of the amount of work that you'd have to do in your own time. Started to work too late. I didn't start working until after Christmas. So all advice that we as teachers have been dishing out since the dawn of time, but really I think holds great value to come from someone a year down the line on, looking back, maybe not regrets that they have, but, in hindsight, they can see maybe things they should have done slightly differently. The Year 12 should be made a lot more aware of how important work experience is when applying to universities. A lack of effort from me. What worked for me? Well, getting together in groups in free time to go over classwork and revise. Consolidation is so important. Although I did my homework, I didn't really do much more. So as I said, you can go through the motions of going to lessons and doing the homework, but at A level it's never done. There's always more to do, so long as a balance is struck as well between having some rest and exercise and all sorts as well. So comments there that have genuinely come from our Year 13 students, both this year and last, and that would be well worth sort of Year 12s taking on board as soon as possible. So 7 essential tips for surviving sixth form. I've included these slides because I did go through these in our assembly last week, and I think I've already alluded to a number of things on them, but I think it is important that we, address some important plans going forward. So increased motivation. Give your son the motivation that they need. Hopefully they've chosen subjects now. They should really want to do those subjects. They should be motivated to work on those subjects in their own time. It shouldn't be a drag, ideally, if it's a subject they've chosen that they like. They need to have a goal, but it needs to be a realistic, aspirational, but not outside the realms of possibility. For students going into a subject with a 7, for example, certainly in the maths and the sciences, that is still a huge step up to A level for those subjects. So be realistic. Someone going in with a 7 might have to work their socks off in order to achieve a C, possibly a B at A level. Even getting 8s and 9s at GCSE doesn't in no way guarantee A's and A stars at A level. It doesn't work like that. The demands in the step up is quite huge, and it really doesn't correlate that if you get top grades you will get top grades. You have to put the work in. The motivation has to be there. Avoid procrastination. Talk to people and seek advice. I've been really impressed already over the last week with how many students have come to me to discuss their options. They're wondering if they've made the right choice. They're wondering if maybe they should have taken psychology instead of biology, and they want to discuss it with me, and they're not jumping to conclusions, and equally they've got really good reasons for considering their options. It's been really rewarding for me as a head of sixth form to have those conversations and know that so many of our students are really sensibly considering what is best for them, both in terms of what they'll be able to do with their A levels, but also what grades they might be able to attain within those. Talking to teachers, talking to the form tutor, communication is key. It really is throughout sixth form. Time management is obviously very important. Working study periods, I don't want to keep repeating myself. One of the big concerns that we often have in sixth form is when our students get jobs, part-time jobs outside of school. Yes, it's great to have that cash, it's great to have that responsibility as well. However, there's a very fine balance as to what is productive in terms of maintaining the demands of A level and managing a social life, some fitness, some exercise, some rest and relaxation, and a part-time job. So we really would encourage our students to work no more than, let's say, 8 hours in a part-time job, and those hours ideally should not be on an evening on a school evening. Keep those hours to weekends. Self-directed study time we've spoken about. I've talked about the work areas available. I've talked about how important it is for students to work from the off. I won't repeat myself there. Effective studying as well. Like, be honest. Encourage your student to be your son to be honest with himself. If he knows that sitting there with his phone next to him, he's actually spending 15 minutes of every 20 minutes on his phone and 5 minutes actually doing the work, then take the phone away. Encourage him to put the phone in the kitchen with you whilst he sits and does his work for half an hour. Then he can have his phone back. Same goes for the Xbox, the telly, any distractions. They can be there once the work is done or when that time is allocated. But working whilst having those distractions on the side is never, in my experience, a good idea. Getting more from your day, so going to bed at a sensible time, not being tired, all important stuff which let's face it, as adults we all still battle with at times. I know I do. Going to sleep, getting to sleep at the right time, waking up, feeling motivated, doing exercise at the right time, eating at sensible times. It's all hard, it's all a learning curve. We're not expecting them to perfect it, but it's all things that are important in terms of getting the best out of oneself each day. Workspace and environment at home, make sure that it is, like I said, as quiet and distraction free as possible. And equally in school, make sure he is, encourage him to move away from his friends. If he's got a free period with the same 3 people who he knows he's not going to do any work with, encourage him to move away, sit in a different area of the school, get his work done, and then he'll be with his friends at break time and lunchtime. Revision is a big one. If the work is going on, as I'm recommending, as all of our teachers here, or teachers anywhere would recommend, revision is happening all the time. Because for every hour lesson, if your son is then doing an hour on the same topic, that's consolidation, that is revision. If he's then revisiting something 3 weeks later, that is revision. Revision shouldn't be a traumatic event that happens just before exams, because if the consolidation has been going on throughout the year, then the revision is being done throughout the year. So, opportunities for personal development. Within school, we have so many extracurricular activities available, both sporting and non-sporting. We're so lucky to have the sports facilities that we do. Equally, we're so lucky to have the staff and sixth formers running the societies that we do. It's a real strength of St Ambrose. I've talked about the activities carousel already, making sure that your son gets a variety of extracurricular experiences there, supercurricular if you like. I've talked about the student leadership team. Edmund Rice Group and Advocacy is linked, is overseen by the student leadership team, but there's opportunities for everybody to get involved with that throughout the school. And volunteering, like I said, we're trying to set that up. We're very hopeful that that will be operational this year. And we would encourage your son to set up his own volunteering and community work outside of school as well. Weekends, holidays, helping out in a care home, as and when COVID will allow. Careers. 2 of our student leadership team oversee careers. I know they are working closely with our careers coordinators in school to make sure that things go out in the newsletter and via parent mail. In March, there will be a careers fair. I haven't got a date for that yet, but much more information will come on that. Work Experience Week is a big one. That is, and I've left the date off because I need to double check it, but I think it's the week of the beginning the 7th or 8th of July. Again, that will be confirmed. But we'd encourage your son to be, they will have to find their own placement, and the sooner they start doing that, the better. Thinking about maybe if they want to go into journalism, can they contact a local newspaper or Altrincham Today or a local radio station and secure some work experience for that week. Places fill up really quickly. A lot of schools have a work experience a week around that time. Some placements are quite rigorous in terms of securing. You have to go through quite a tough application process, but we have had boys secure those before. Some of those might not be happening during our work experience week, in which case all is not lost, so long as you go through the correct channels in terms of communicating with our attendance officer. The request will go to Mr. Rainey for time off to do that work experience, as long as it doesn't interrupt with other things happening in school, such as exams. We're nearly there. 2 slides left. Mentoring is another thing that's up and running again this year. I've spoken about Mrs. Hart, who's our pastoral and academic manager. We've already had loads of applications from our Year 12 students to mentor lower school students, which I'm so pleased about. I know Mrs. Hart is quite overwhelmed by how enthusiastic the response has been from our new Year 12s to do that mentoring, which is brilliant. Obviously, it looks great on a UCAS application form to have done that. It's also really beneficial for our sixth formers in terms of their subject knowledge, because as a teacher, I know it's very different learning something and being taught something to then teaching it yourself. You develop a whole new level of understanding in order to teach it, and that's where some of our mathematicians, for example, will develop their own skills in helping others develop theirs. Also shows great leadership potential should they wish to apply for the student leadership team later on in the year. In terms of mentoring for your son, there is a lot of departmental support around. It varies as per the department. I can speak on behalf of the maths department, which is that we offer a maths clinic on a Friday. There's a sixth form maths clinic which is run on alternate weeks by myself and Mrs. Monk, Miss Lorraines and Miss Donegan. We also have a lower school one as well for those of you with children lower down the school, and they are run by Miss McLaughlin and Mr. Singh and our Key Stage 4, so our Year 11 maths ambassadors. Just other business now. I'm conscious that I've been talking far longer than I intended to. It's usually the way. You're doing well if you're still with me. Option changes, they have until tomorrow. We've had quite a number of changes taking place this week. The deadline for that to happen is tomorrow. The only exception being those who are on 4 subjects. We can have a discussion in future weeks with those students who are struggling with the 4 subjects and think it might be wise to drop down to an EPQ or core maths rather than stay on 4 subjects. But nobody will be able to take up a new subject other than dropping down to EPQ and core maths beyond tomorrow. Punctuality and signing out. Our students need to be in the building by 8:55 every morning and sat on bottoms in form at 9 AM. We've spoken about signing out. We've spoken about attendance. They're only to sign out lunchtime and period 5. Other than that, we will require written correspondence, please, to our attendance officer for appointments to be approved. I've spoken about our behaviour and compliance policy, the ABC, which you have had emailed out to you, and I'll probably put it on this email with the link as well. We have run a Friday detention after school for people who, for various reasons, don't comply with our policy. So that is an after school on a Friday with Mr. Brady and I, but we very much hope never to have to use that. Nobody wants that. Expectations and procedures I've spoken about. The other thing I just wanted to mention was general RE, which, as you probably know, the boys have a lesson once a week for that. That is a requirement of being at St Ambrose sixth form. EPQ is 3 lessons a fortnight, and at the moment we're doing a mixture of sessions in the lecture theatre for the taught skills, which is quite a new experience for the boys to be taught in the lecture theatre and for them to have to make their own notes on what's being said. And we're getting a few of our Year 13s to present their projects, which I have to say are absolutely sensational, really impressive. Core maths is 4 lessons a fortnight, and that's all up and running, and activities I have spoken about at great length already. And finally, thank you ever so much for taking the time to listen to all 34 minutes of me and then some. It's longer than I intended. I'm sorry about that. I have a habit of doing that. Thank you ever so much. Just a final message for any port of call. Your first port of call is your student's, your son's form tutor. So please make sure that you address any correspondence, any phone calls to them in the first instance. Anything that they can't answer, they will come and find me or the assistant director to sixth form 4 or somebody else. Finally, whilst I remember, we've got open day coming up in a couple of weeks. We ask our Year 12 students to come and help us with the running of that, along with our student leadership team. So just want to make you aware of there. Other than that, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We're really looking forward to watching how your son blossoms into a young man over the next 2 years. It's a great, a really rewarding process being head of sixth form and seeing how our young men grow up and what they go on to achieve in life. Thank you very much and have a good evening.